10 coats of paint stained in tobacco.
Well, well, well. Welcome to the Adult in the Room podcast. I'm Victoria Taft, your adult in the room. You always have to be careful when you look for this website, this live stream, if you're doing it on your own, because the word adult. So be careful with that. But Adult in the Room podcast with Victoria Taft. That's who I am, and this is where we are. I'm your news Sherpa, and of course today I woke up. I'm not kidding. It was around 4. And all of a sudden it's like, and by the way, Prince Andrew was arrested this morning. I'm sorry to laugh. Well, he deserved it because he's a scumbag. But let us, though, not mince words anymore. Let's find out what has happened in the umpteen hours since at 8 o'clock Britain time. He was arrested and his multiple houses were tossed by the Thames Valley Police and others who are, looking into this. By all means, this has something to do with the release of the Epstein files throughout the world. And so, as a result, they believe that he did something that put his position of honorific authority, that being Prince Andrew, as a trade representative in jeopardy, and that there might have been some self-dealing, and then we'll get into that a little bit. We're also going to go through some of the names that have been dropped from the Epstein files, and by dropped, I mean released, and what a colossal problem this is turning into, and how it's just made a mockery out of a couple of congressmen. And that will be interesting, I hope. There's also the Reid Hoffman issue. I mean, here's the guy who's the connection to Silicon Valley. And for whatever reason, anybody talking about Reid Hoffman? No? Really? Okay, we're going to talk about that as well. All right, so a couple of things. Now, I went to AI and I said, okay, biggest revelations in the last few hours on this case, because I just wanted to hit the high points so we can start out with a shared context and then we can go on. 1, European fallout. Of course, Andrew, who's now known as Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, hyphenated last name, shows that he forwarded confidential UK trade reports in 2010 after receiving them as the trade envoy that he was, because Queen Elizabeth needed to give the dude a job, because clearly, the family always has that one, I guess, one of those guys, the Goldbricker, whatever. I am not a Goldbricker. In fact, none of my sisters is a Goldbricker. That's an old-fashioned term for lazy, and we're not lazy. So, but he was the lazy dude. He was the spare of his generation. And so he needed a job. His mom gives him, he was her favorite son, and gives him a gig as a trade representative. And he gave trade reports to Epstein minutes after receiving them as trade envoy, triggering his February 19th arrest for misconduct in public office. Peter Mandelson also was a member and a Labor Party representative in the House of Lords, had a peerage, was a lord, and he quit his job because he was also leaking this information, this kind of information. This one had to do with an huge asset deal that the UK government was going to make, which of course, let's assume that Jeffrey Epstein was a financier, of which he was, of some repute, ill or otherwise. And we believe he was doing deals, sort of subterranean deals, to finance operations by spy agencies. Probably. That's kind of what it looks like. And not necessarily just doing the underage girls as part of the sweeteners for the deals, but just rather maybe separate and distinct things. Be that as it may, that's what it's sort of looking like. He was financing some of these things to buy weapons and such for operations that were going on around the world, and that for agencies, political and investigative intelligence agencies. So we're going to get a little bit more about that aspect of it from our guest coming up at 1:30, which is 4:30 Eastern, as we talk about with a former FBI cyber expert, and who actually was instrumental in rolling up the most notorious spy in the FBI. He has some gravitas on this issue, so we'll talk to him at 1:30, and we'll get into that a little bit more. So Peter Mandelson, Prince Andrew, those guys, dunzo. Then we have, in the corporate world this week, Pritzker, Tom Pritzker. Does that name sound familiar to you? Pritzker. Yeah, it's J.B. Pritzker's cousin. He's also part of the Hyatt family, which is to say they run the Hyatt hotels. They are multi-gazillionaires. And Tom Pritzker had a very interesting relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. I don't know that it was sordid, but what it was a really pretty interesting deal on, this is so interesting. All of a sudden, my I don't know, something happened. Anyway, so Pritzker's name comes up in a recording that we'll play for you that Mike Benz found and others found, and it's pretty interesting. He was at a big meeting with a number of people whose names appear, of course, in the Epstein file, doing a deal on behalf of Ehud Barak. What? Yeah, the former Israeli PM. So this is kind of crazy, just crazy stuff. So we'll talk about that, and you'll listen to it yourself. You will get that for yourself. Oh, Lord. Let me see something. Force quit. God, this is so annoying. That's going. Safari's just decided to go nuts. I love my Mac, don't get me wrong, but come on, man. Anyway, other bombshells, I'm told. Pentagon FBI property deals back in the day. This is a 2016 alleged deal or that he was pitching, that Jeffrey Epstein was pitching, before he killed himself in prison in, 2019? And so he was trying to get co-ownership and an FBI offices via the Cayman Island entity that he had going, linked to aide David Stern, who was a former Prince Andrew associate. So Prince Andrew wasn't just, a guy looking for a good time. Prince Andrew was like a baller, apparently. Well, anyway. And trying to insinuate himself into certain deals. And he sounds like he was potentially, possibly, allegedly doing some self-dealing. My camera's not working? Really? Huh, that's weird. Is my camera working now? Hey, everybody, can you see me? Can you see me? Hey, that's weird. Okay, you can see me now? Oh, sorry. I wonder what was going on. That's weird. Huh. So interesting. I'm so glad Alex is here to tell me such things. And listen, if you're on YouTube or Rumble, would you just put a message in the comment box, please? And the reason I'm asking is because we've had such horrendous issues with YouTube. Just throttling the channel over the last 2 weeks. And because they said that we showed something that we weren't supposed to show. So that was pretty interesting. And which was that drive-by shooting by Tommy Boy. Thank you very much for that thumbs up. You can just do a thumbs up if you can see. And if you're, looking at us through Rumble or YouTube. Okay, so there was that. I was just going over the stuff. I hope you can still see me. UN experts calling abuse as a crime against humanity. He wanted the Pentagon deal, and he wanted, he had some dealings with Crown Princess Mette-Marit, who of Norway and Slovakia. He had some connections there. So that's supposedly a huge international incident. Okay, cool. Not cool, but you know what I'm saying. Here we go. So let us go to the New York Times to get the latest. Prince Andrew, or was known previously as Prince Andrew, the current Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. He's been let go out of police custody. He spent hours and hours and hours there. They tossed his houses. Basically, they tossed his brother's houses. That guy, his brother, his brother is? Yeah, the king. And because it was opined on the Beebs today that the reason that King Charles is letting the former prince stay at his house is so as he doesn't go to some of his disreputable friends to seek money to support him, because he'll probably do something really bad. That's why Chuck took him in and put him up, believe it or not, at Sandringham Castle, which is in one of the private residences of Sandringham. But previous properties that he stayed at were also tossed today. And before he was just unceremoniously just booted out. Dude, you're not a prince anymore. Just get the hell out. So that happened. So anyway, British police Thursday evening, I read here in the New York Times. See, they're good for something. Sometimes. Not everything, as you'll see on the program. So they released Andrew Mountbatten Windsor after taking him into custody. Okay, over his ties to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. And the Thames Valley Police said in a statement Thursday evening, the arrested man has now been released under investigation. They have not mentioned his name. They just call him the arrested man, but everybody knows it's Andrew. The arrest underscored a striking contrast in the official responses to the Epstein files. This is the low blow, honestly, that the New York Times goes at. The arrest underscored striking contrast in the official responses to the Epstein files. The British authorities have moved aggressively to investigate the possibility of crimes emerging from 3 million pages of correspondence with Epstein, while the police in the United States have not. Because guess what? Not for lack of trying, by the way, but Andrew doesn't live here. He's under his British rule. He was under color of authority when he allegedly did these misdeeds and self-dealing, i.e. possibly, allegedly. And so they are moving fast because they found evidence of that in the Epstein files. And what do we have in the United States? Well, this is interesting. I want you to enjoy, if you will. Here's some B-roll, some lovely B-roll. Let's just share this tab. Gonna have a little B-roll of Andrew. Back in his happier days. Back in his happier days, Prince Andrew. Yeah. Huh. Okay, great. That's just fantastic. Sometimes I have a bunch of tabs to share today. So what happens is then apparently I disappear or freeze or something. That's fantastic. Here we go. So yeah, I've got all kinds of windows and stuff up here. Fine. Anyway, a little, in the event that you don't know who Prince Andrew is, there were some photos of him right there for your deal. Okay, so the Epstein files and what we know about some of the instances of individuals who've been named in the Epstein files, what's going on as a result. So in New York Times, as I just read to you, said that he's been released. And also, gosh, those British, they were just lightning speed going after Andrew. Well, who's going to go after somebody with lightning speed? Who is the target, New York Times, in the United States? I mean, you will hear from people. They'll say, oh, there are plenty of targets in there. Oh, are there now? Are there now? Let's go over here. I want to make sure I get this right. Here is Ro Khanna. He is a congressman, and he and Thomas Massie of Kentucky got together. Ro Khanna, by the way, with Bernie Sanders, has single-handedly driven out $1 trillion of capital wealth from the state of California for his encouragement of a billionaire's tax, which will never stay at billionaires. It always devolves down into little people. And so that's Ro Khanna. That's your guy. He's a congressman from Silicon Valley. Here he is saying that he and Thomas Massie wrote the Epstein Act and that sort of thing, and they gave the DOJ 30 days to make it, collect all the docs, get rid of all the information that wasn't supposed to be in there, like what, at 30 days. And what did they do? They got, I guess, I've read anywhere from 200 to 500 people, 200 of them at least, were attorneys, and they put these documents into discoverable, searchable formats so you can see them from your own laptop. Hillary Clinton didn't do that with her emails. No, you know what she did? Hey, were you 30,000 emails? You know what she did? She copied them onto paper. These are electronic documents. Does she download them to a file? Oh no, a thumb drive? Oh, can't have it. External hard drive, something? Anything? No. Prints them out and gives them to the people asking for the documents. 30 days, they go through these things and they do as much as they can. They're supposed to remove the victims' names, and they blew that a couple of times. And so Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie get into high dudgeon, and here they go. They go over to the DOJ. They get 6 names. Watch this. I want you to watch this.
80% of the files are still redacted. In fact, there were 6 wealthy, powerful men that the DOJ hid for no apparent reason. When Congressman Massie and I pointed this out to the Department of Justice, they acknowledged their mistake, and now they have revealed the identity of these 6 powerful men. These men are Salvatore Navora, Zorab Michalad, Leopig Leonor, Nicola Caputa.
Okay, he's so proud. He and Thomas Massie went to the DOJ and they instantly found these names. And they also said, hey, right after they found the names, this is before Ro Khanna went to the floor of the House and named these men, so that the victims didn't have to do it because they can get sued, but speech and debate clause being what it is, the congressman said these names on the floor of the House. Here they are going, I cannot believe that. We got these names right away. Oh, yeah. Okay. What's wrong with this video?
Was unredacted, or did it look pretty similar to what we've seen publicly?
I mean, what we're after is the men who Jeffrey Epstein trafficked women to. We want those names published. We're not out to embarrass people.
Yeah, you are.
And the problem is, we went in there hoping to see that in
the point,
302
isn't it?
forms. What we found out is those 302 forms were redacted before they got to the DOJ. So,
Did
but
you
our
have that? Wait, wait.
legislation directs the FBI.
Did you ask for that in your hastily put together bill that you said they had to complete to your specifications within 30 days? No, you did not. And Thomas Massie is a doggone certified smart guy. Okay, both of them are stinking smart. You'd think that they would have figured this out.
Which is the agency that produced those 302 forms, to also produce these documents. The Attorney General is ultimately responsible for that production, so that's why we're here at the DOJ to view these files. But there needs to be more information given in those 302s.
Uh-oh.
So I was disappointed we didn't find that.
Yeah, because the 302s were already previously redacted prior to them coming over to the DOJ, because they came over from a multitude of places, including the trial and discovery of the Ghislaine Maxwell trial. There were docs from SDNY, which included the stuff from that trial as well as other things. Florida, the Fed trial and the local state trial, or the state investigation that was put on the kibosh when they went to the feds and they got it scrubbed pretty much. I mean, it was just resulted in one guilty plea, a conspiracy to go after an underage kid or desire her for prostitution. And then he got to spend several months in the lockup every day during the daytime hours. And then he could go back and do whatever ridiculous things he was doing at his Palm Beach home. Okay. All right. So you're not going to believe this, but here are the men. I'm going to share this tab. Let's hope things don't go completely foobar. Browser, listen to screen share audio. Oh, okay. Oh, I get to restart my browser. Oh, thank you so much. Okay, so 4 men in the unredacted names files named by Ro Khanna have no ties to Epstein. And they went back and they blamed the DOJ for that. These guys asked for those names to be redacted. And they were redacted. Ro Khanna goes to the floor of the House, says their names out loud. One guy gets arrested, or one guy gets fired from his job, and it turns out they have nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein. They were simply brought up to be part of an FBI lineup. Come on, man. So here we go. Ro Khanna, the California Democratic representative, read a list of 6 names on the House floor earlier this week and said they were wealthy, powerful men that the DOJ hid. Well, it turns out not so fast. 4 of those names had nothing to do with Epstein at all. 2 of them, 6 men, Khanna mentioned, are Sultan Ahmed bin Sulayem, an Emirati billionaire business person who has since resigned as CEO of DP World, and Les Wexner, a billionaire retail magnate, which he talked about him multiple times on this program. But the other 4 names did not appear to have a public profile. A spokesman from the office of Todd Blanche, the Deputy Attorney General, told The Guardian the file was a photo lineup used for investigative purposes by the Southern District of New York U.S. Attorney's Office. Representative Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie forced the unmasking of completely random people selected years ago for an FBI lineup, men and women. These individuals have nothing to do with Epstein or Maxwell. Yet he got them unmasked, and they released their identities. And as I say, one of the men was fired from his job. I think it was an electrician or a car mechanic or something. Just absurd. Okay. So that's why Trump and all those guys were going, hey, you don't know. You have no idea who's going to be named in this and these things. We have no idea There are specious and salacious reports that are in this thing, and we have no idea what the truth is because these are, if they're not finished investigations. That's another story for another day. But if there's not enough evidence to suggest that somebody broke the law, including Les Wexner, which, I mean, that guy, if that guy's not getting rolled up, ain't nobody getting rolled up, right? I mean, he had nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein's crazy stuff. Jeffrey Epstein gave him power of attorney over his vast wealth to do deals that Jeffrey Epstein was doing. Whatever those were. And he didn't go to the island. He didn't go to the townhouse. He didn't go to any of those places. The Zorro Ranch, where there's some really crazy things going on with breeding humans, all kinds of crazy ideas. And so that's what you see in the Epstein files. Okay. So they outed the wrong people, and they just made a mockery of themselves, as far as I'm concerned. Now the CIA is being asked by Congresswoman Nancy Mace to reveal all about Jeffrey Epstein. And I say, let's do it. Let's go, baby. Let's find out once and for all what the heck he was doing with the spy agencies. Indeed, there's one incident in which in Kim.com, who's actually pretty reliable as I understand it, online said that he admits, Jeffrey Epstein did, to being a spy. Then you have the contrasting things. Now you've got, let me just make sure I can do this. I hope I can share this video. I'm going to go here. I'm going to share this tab, and then I'm going to share the other thing because I want you to see how the victims were used. Remember now, after we talked about Pam Bondi's appearance before the House Judiciary Committee and how they were trying to hang all the problems of the Epstein files on her and the Trump administration. This is I mean, you got to personally appreciate the fact that these are the guys like, I'm doing what you told me to do. Why am I getting dragged into this? I'm doing the best I can. You give me 30 days to process 6 million classified and other documents. What do you want from me? Apparently, they wanted magic. But now the media just go right along with this. So on NBC News, I wanted you to see this. I almost played it on Tuesday. But, okay, what the heck is this? Did I just, hold on, folks. I just want to make sure. Do I have that in a video or do I have that in oh, crap. I don't have it. I thought I did. Sorry, guys. Oh, here we go. Yay, I do have it. All right. So let us play this. It is NBC News going right along with the narrative that, oh, hey, by the way, it's all the DOJ's fault, right? Right? Okay. I'm sorry. What accountability for what exactly? What is the DOJ supposed to be being responsible for? What accountability are they supposed to have? Yeah, do we want absolute truth out of our established institutions? Of course we do, obviously. But you're castigating Pam Bondi, and let's say, I know I've heard the stories. Okay, I've heard the stories. Some people think she's not super in tune with what she's supposed to be doing. But, the screen sharing was muted? Of course it was. What is it? Anyway, the bottom line, she said, was she's not being held responsible. They're not taking accountability. That's what she said. And I was like, what the heck? taking accountability for what exactly? For being the only people who have literally done anything about Jeffrey Epstein? I look, even you find out, you compare and contrast, if you will, to what Hillary Clinton did in releasing her documents, and you show and hold that in contrast with what's going on for the Jeffrey Epstein documents. And it's just, there's no comparison. Like, we are dancing as fast as we can, Ro Khanna. We're dancing as fast as we can, Thomas Massey. And as soon as we get something out of there, guess what happens? You guys are rattling off the doggone wrong names. You morons. So you think it's easy? You guys go in there and in 2 hours, well, they only had 2 hours, there's 6 million classified documents, other kinds of documents there. And we found immediately 6 names. And it turns out they out the names of 4 men who had nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein, but were used in a photo lineup for a case out of SDNY. Homie, please. How lame is that? Oh, but there's more. Oh, there's more. And the one name that I've seen gain a lot of fire is Steve Bannon's name. And we are going to look into what is being said about Steve Bannon being in the Jeffrey Epstein files. Reid Hoffman in the Epstein. I know you're going, who the heck is Reid Hoffman? He's the founder of LinkedIn. He's a multi-gazillionaire, and he's been funding the lawfare against Donald Trump for the past 8 years. He provides the money, and Norm Eisen does all the planning along with Eric, what's his name? Whatever. Doesn't matter. I'll remember in a second. Doesn't matter. This was all jive and utter nonsense, but nevertheless, Reid Hoffman was there. So very interesting. Oh, great! We've got somebody tapping in from state prison. Hey, you never know what you're going to get, especially now that I think YouTube's still throttling us. So this is fun. We're going to find out exactly how many thousands of people are watching later when we put out our individual videos. So, all right. I want to introduce you to Eric O'Neill. And he's a guy who, a former hand at the FBI. He's a cybersecurity expert. He puts it this way. He's a legendary FBI operative, and he is. You know, some people say that about themselves. He actually is, because he's the guy who was able to roll up Robert Hanssen. He helped in that case. And Robert Hanssen was the biggest spy the FBI had ever seen. 25-year veteran of the FBI, and he was feeding details to the Russians. Yeah, so Eric worked directly undercover with the spy within the FBI's Information Assurance Division. He is a guy who's got some street cred with respect to cyber security and all things cyber. Eric O'Neill, I'm sure I made a total hash of your CV, but you know what? Pretty cool. And you also wrote a book. Let me just see if I can find that. Everything else is just going foobar today, but let's find out.
No worries. Wait. Well, there's the first one, Gray Day, and the second one just came out. Is Spies, Lies, and Cybercrime. There you go. Thank you, Victoria.
Yeah. Well, Spies, Lies, and Cybercrime. Okay. Let's talk about the Epstein files, because that's what, we're talking about. And bring your experience to bear on what you're seeing out of the Epstein file releases so far.
Well, to put it succinctly, a total mess from the start. There was no way that the DOJ was going to even approach being able to redact millions of documents correctly, or even close to correctly, within 30 days. So
no, that's crazy talk.
The law that was passed was ridiculous. And honestly, undercover with the FBI, working in secure compartmentalized rooms, having paper that I redacted, and back in the old days used to take this huge black magic marker and just go across. what people don't understand is when you work in government, you're trained to over redact. If there's any question whether it could fit into one of the buckets to prevent information from being disclosed, you redact it, right? And typically what you would have with these processes is a number of levels of review. So you would have your lower rung person doing the initial review, and then it would be reviewed by a supervisor, and then an attorney would come in and look for it, because you don't want to reveal any information that is protected by the attorney-client privilege. But here it looks like they threw as many bodies as they could. They didn't have time to really train people to do this appropriately, or to know exactly what categories of information must be redacted and shouldn't. And they made a lot of mistakes. And so they've had to retract things. They've exposed the names of victims. And what's happened is it's just encouraged the conspiracy theories. And the whole point was to dissuade people from many of these conspiracy theories.
I worry about the fact that this will just completely hold in disrepute this whole process, which I think is what you're saying, and so cause more problems, definitely. But the Congress asked them to do that, and so they did what they could, and then. The other thing they did was I didn't read, I guess I didn't read the specifics of the Epstein Act, but they wanted to pierce grand jury testimony. And
Yes.
I mean, that's just outrageous.
Well, that was actually if when you read the law, the act, right, the Epstein Transparency Act, I'm flaking on what it was called, but it did have a few sentences that said that unless otherwise prevented from being disclosed. And there were a lot of categories that the DOJ could have prevented a lot more of this information from being disclosed. So good on the DOJ for actually, in some respects, over disclosing information. Anything related to an investigation, they could have redacted or completely removed. Obviously, anything related to a victim, that's critical. We don't want victims' names out there, and they made some mistakes, and some victims' names were revealed. They also did not have to reveal a single thing about a grand jury investigation.
Oh, okay. So they didn't have to do that.
They did.
But they want that.
They actually went to the courts in Florida and New York and asked for permission to reveal information pertaining to the grand jury investigation and the deliberations, which is really what we all want to see. And they got permission from the courts, and then they redacted it all anyway. So what does that tell you?
The courts gave them permission to do that? I thought there were
permission, then they redacted it anyway, and that made people angry. But it's possible, I mean, if we're trying to get in their heads, it's possible that some portions of what were disclosed that were discussed in the deliberations in those grand jury investigations, which what we want to see is prosecute or not prosecute, could actually be information related to individuals that are under investigation. That's the only reason I could think of why, after they gotten permission, they would redact it.
Right.
I'm really hoping there's somebody else who's going to get prosecuted here, because it's a pretty broad crime.
Yeah. Who do you think's next up for the old Who's Gal?
Well, there are some names in there that have come out, and the problem with the disclosure in general is just because your name shows up in this massive amount of documents, just because you were friends with Jeffrey Epstein, just because you traveled with him, doesn't mean that you you violated laws in one of two areas: financial crimes, which I think some people will get prosecuted for, or the worst crime, right, which would be the abuse of minors. And that's what we're really concerned about. The problem with the Epstein files and the disclosure is pretty much anyone's name who's in there is fair game for political attack and social attack.
Of course.
And I think that originally, going all the way back to Biden, there's two administrations who didn't want to disclose this stuff. So it's not a Democrat or Republican thing. Part of the reason was there are a lot of names in there who we looked at, and the FBI, the DOJ, and chose not to prosecute because there's no there. But once their names are revealed, then they're fair game for a lot of scrutiny and attack.
Let me ask you this, because this is really bothering me. The people, they call themselves the survivors of Jeffrey Epstein, and many of these women have been just treated horribly and as chattel. Got it.
Right.
And I know how that could happen, and feel terrible for them. But I do believe if you're going to require the names released, could you at least help us cross-reference by giving us a few names? Because if you want somebody to be prosecuted, don't you come forward with some allegations and a name? And
Well, yeah, you're exactly right. And yes, they could come forward and give names. Some of them claim that they provided names, that they were ignored. And the documents, at least what has been provided, don't point to anybody. Otherwise, every journalist would have found it. So it's a big head scratcher. I was expecting that we would see some redacted information, maybe some FBI 302 memos that suggest that there are these ongoing investigations into all these people who abused all these girls. And we know that the girls were abused. There's no way there's this many victims who came forward if there wasn't abuse. We know that Epstein had this island. We know he had this plane called the Lolita Express. We know that people were on that plane, and and why else go to that island, right? So it wasn't just Epstein and Maxwell who were doing this and grooming these girls and bringing them there. So there has to be more there, and it's quite possible that Epstein never kept a list, that he wasn't doing this to blackmail them. He was an influence peddler who this was a bonus, right? You got to go party with them.
right.
You got to go party with stars and party with politicians and party with people like the royal family, right?
Sure.
From England. And if you did that and you gave him your wealth to manage so he could skim off the top because he was a degenerate crook, then you got all these extra perks, and he wasn't using it to blackmail people. That's possible, and maybe that's why there isn't the information that everybody hoped to find.
The Mike Benz, who's former State Department attorney, and he's been looking at all these things, and he's a pretty super smart guy, suggests that Jeffrey Epstein was really involved in this sort of statecraft on the espionage side by helping to finance some of these operations that the CIA was doing, including starting with Iran-Contra back in the day after BCCI blew up, and they had no place. They didn't have a CIA bank anymore, and so they needed the financiers to help buy weapons and whatever it was that they were doing to massage deals between states. What do you make of that?
Yeah, there's a lot of that. And I'm putting all that into the conspiracy theory bucket. The reason I'm doing that is because, it's interesting. If you go back before Trump was elected, right, it was Kash Patel and Dan Bongino who were the two people crowing the loudest about the Epstein files and the Epstein list, and Epstein potentially being a undercover operative for this country or the other. And then they were put directly into the two positions with the most visibility into all of this, and came back and said, it wasn't what we thought. And at some point you got
almost instantaneously too. It was like within a couple of weeks of getting there. Like, whoa! You haven't seen everything to say that. You can't say that yet.
Yeah, that's true. But still, if we can't trust what the FBI is saying, then we're in a lot of trouble. I don't know that. I don't know that Epstein was protected because he could have said things about being a spy. And then you've got to go down all the way down this rabbit hole, right? He was a spy. And if he was allowed to talk, then he would have revealed all this. And so he was killed in prison. And, that's less likely than the fact that he was a miserable, pathetic scumbag who was really good grifter, who tricked a lot of people into giving him his money because he was a wealth, investor. And he skimmed off the top and then traded and peddled influence all over the world, which looks a lot like someone who is peddling influence and espionage. They actually work the same way. So I'm less inclined to think that he was a spy for the CIA or a spy for the Mossad or whoever else you want to consider him a spy for, and more inclined to think that he was an influence peddler who grifted a lot of people.
There was one piece of evidence that he said is it a FD? What is it?
FD New York.
No. I mean, I don't know what case it was, but it was a FBI document in which he supposedly admitted, and I don't think it was the 302, it was something else, like an FD 1023 or something.
Okay.
And where he said that he was a Mossad agent. Okay. And who says that? And does anybody actually say stuff like that? I have no idea. But
Yeah.
but nevertheless, it was, and it came from somebody who really felt it was something reliable.
I think, I know that, let's say that he had some ties to espionage. That is something we were never going to find out. It's just, that would be buried so deep. No one's going to release that, and we're never going to find it out. I'm afraid that, with Epstein being dead, by, all investigations point towards suicide, even though even there are a lot of holes in the story. And Maxwell simply saying, I'm not talking unless you give me immunity, and it doesn't look like anybody's going to do that. We just have no way to get that information directly.
Whoa. So, what do you do with this then? I mean, what do you think is the leading suggestion for what he was really doing? And I mean, you're a guy in the business. I mean, you were at the FBI, and you rolled up Hansen. I mean, for crying out loud, I'd love to know more about that. I want you to come back and talk about that sometime.
Certainly.
And what do you think happened here? Who was he?
I think Hansen. I know everything about Hansen. I think that Epstein, like I said, was a criminal grifter. And what he did is a couple of things. He peddled influence. He got a lot of very wealthy people to believe that he was this brilliant financier, which he really wasn't. But he made billions off of the backs of very wealthy, high net individuals. And he created this entire ecosystem of parties and influence that really the people who see themselves as very special wanted to be invited to. And when he got them there, it was like the land of the lost. They did bad things. Just because someone went to the island doesn't mean they did a bad thing with an underage girl. But we do know that he was grooming underage girls from the Epstein files. We know he was grooming underage girls from, for example, the college campus of his alma mater, where he provided an endowment, and then the college actually introduced him to up and coming young women that he would mentor, and then even the parents would come when they met, and they thought that he was mentoring, but he's bringing them to the island to give old guys massages. He got in trouble for going to Mar-a-Lago and recruiting people out of the spa, and eventually getting kicked out of Mar-a-Lago by Trump, according to Donald Trump, President Trump. And I'm sure he and
Virginia Giuffre.
Yeah, and right, exactly. And I'm sure he and Maxwell, his co-conspirator, did this in other places. And that is grooming, and making a young woman believe that you are going to get this benefit. I'm going to teach you this. And then you end up in an island, say, you're going to be near Bill Clinton. You're going to be near all these really important people, the CEO of Microsoft. Right. And it turns out they're not learning from these people. They're rubbing their backs, or they have to swim in a pool with them. I mean, these are the kind of things that Epstein was about. And in return, people would give him his money to invest because they felt like, this is a guy who has connections. He knows how to do this. And I get to be near an actor. I get to be near a person in the royal family. I get to be near this really wealthy CEO. And people just like to be near people in power.
I want to show you a story that, let me make sure I can get that here. Let me see. It is a story from an Indian publication, which sometimes they come up with some really pretty interesting things. Let's find out. I want to make sure. Yeah, here it is. And make sure I can get that up. Here it is. And it's this. Andrew tried to have Epstein introduced to the UAE's Mohammed bin Zayed. And this happened in 2010. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor tried to have the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein introduced in 2010 to Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, who is now the president of the UAE. And it goes on and talks about the introduction and this kind of interesting thing. And the reason I bring it up is because his name comes up in this text exchange between Steve Bannon and Jeffrey Epstein, of which there are plentiful examples. And so I was looking at this, and just he at the very end of this, they're talking about meeting somewhere, and MBZ, it comes up, and I go, "Who's MBZ?" And it turns out it's this guy that Andrew introduced Jeffrey Epstein to years ago. And I just thought, who is that? Do you know this guy? And what's going on in this relationship that we need to know about in your estimation?
Right. Yeah, these sort of things can be troubling. And the problem is that we don't know where this came from or what the DOJ was doing with it or where they went with it or whether they investigated anything or whether they looked into Bannon. And that can be the problem sometimes with these massive dumps of information with no explanation behind them, right? When there is a court proceeding and the court documents become public, then we can see the minds behind the investigation. We can see where it went. We can see where witness information came in and evidence came in. And it all makes nice sense, right?
Right.
So when we get a dump of 3,500,000 pages, it just randomly and not organized and not categorized and with no explanation of where it came from or what the point was, what it creates is more conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
So it kind of works against what I think the DOJ wanted, which was just to throw it all out there and say, see, we did it. Here's everything. The problem with that is now you can start putting these things together. I mean, look at Steve Bannon. If you look at his career, he has cozied up to everybody that he can, like a sucker fish that's in power, right?
Yes.
And so I can certainly see him cozying up to Epstein and
he did.
And trying to get close to other people in power. But three initials. I mean, can you draw that conclusion?
I don't know.
In an evidentiary standard, no. And then do you take action because of that, or what does it mean? It makes it very complicated. But people are finding all sorts of things like that, Victoria, all throughout those documents, and it causes more trouble than it's good. So maybe at the end of the day, Trump was right. He didn't want to release the stuff. Yes. And now we're seeing the repercussions of that. Yeah,
there's the interesting recording, which I probably can't play because apparently I'm not getting sound in my screen share thing. I wonder why. And it's a conversation that Mike Benz put out, and it is in the Epstein files. And it does talk. It's a conversation with Epstein, Ehud Barak, former PM of Israel, Thomas Pritzker, who's J.B. Pritzker's cousin.
Right.
And let's see what else. One more person whose name I'm just not flashing on right at the moment. And what they're doing is they're talking about coming up with ways to monetize Ehud Barak after he leaves government service so he can make lots of money because he's 71. Epstein says, well, you're 71. You have like maybe 3 years to make a lot of money here. Let's chop. We got to get this done. I got a guy here. He's going to put you on a board. It's going to be $3 million a year. Da-da-da-da. I mean, this sounds like, what rich people do.
It is what rich people do.
So a lot of people would suggest that is one of those ways in which Ehud Barak had Epstein in his thrall in some form or fashion, and he was Epstein doing work for Ehud Barak, who previously had been in charge of the intelligence agency. What do you make of that?
Or Epstein would routinely do this for really wealthy people and then get a cut, right, from whatever company he goes on. And then that company now has the benefit of somebody who is high up in a government who can be a little bit of a rainmaker, who can make calls, who can make things happen. I mean, you see people like that all throughout industry. They come out of government, they come out of really high positions, and they become what's called luminaries. They get paid an enormous amount of money to just hang out in a really nice office and make a phone call every once in a while to help the firm or the company, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I could totally see that happening, and that seems like the kind of thing Epstein would do, right? And then he puts this guy on the board somewhere. He probably takes a cut. He's on the take for that, and then they owe him a favor. and he cashes in
Yeah.
that favor later and gets a favor for someone else and just sort of keeps this going. And meanwhile, he's making millions.
I was going to say, can he make as much as he did doing this favor stuff? Do you think he was trying to blackmail people?
In my heart of hearts, I suspect that there was some blackmail going on here and there. Even if it wasn't the sort of blackmail that is overt, right? Where you say, I have you on video doing this with a young girl, right? There can be much more subtle blackmail, right? When he says, I need a favor, and then the first thing that person thinks about is, oh my God, I was at his island, I got all coked up, and I don't want anybody to know what I just did, right?
Right.
And so that can be very subtle, where they're going to be more likely to give him that favor, knowing that they're sort of in this inner circle now of people doing bad things.
I have a question from somebody. I don't know. Maybe you'll know what this means. I do not. Brett writes in and says, what do you think about the big tech companies and DHS holding hands since yesterday? Do you know what they're talking about?
The Department of Homeland Security and the big tech companies holding hands. I'm sorry, I didn't need more context. Unless
Brett, we need more context.
I know that Mark Zuckerberg just testified in front of Congress about the dangers of social media. Especially, there are a number of lawsuits against Meta, for example, and others. That social media is addicted and that it's purposely made addictive. That's the big tech thing that happened yesterday.
Yeah.
But I don't know how that ties to DHS.
Okay. Just wondering. If you're your former FBI agent, if you were running a case here, if you were going after to run this Epstein thing down, what would be your next move?
Yeah, let me answer that a different way, because I want to back up. If I was looking at this as the DOJ and the FBI, way back when there was a massive amount of pressure to release the documents, instead of releasing all the documents, what I would have done is find every single person who could be prosecuted, right? Everyone that there was some sort of actionable evidence to at least go for a grand jury indictment against that person for either the financial crimes or the abuse crimes. And then I would have started indicting people. And I think that if the DOJ had shown that they are pursuing people who have been, a crime has been alleged against, right? Not meaning that they're guilty, not meaning that they're innocent, but that there was an allegation, I think people would have backed off and felt satisfied that something's happened. The problem here is that everybody, including me, is upset that we believed and believe that there are all these people who are abused and nothing is happening.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are saying that, look, it looks like very wealthy, powerful people who are getting away with it for whatever reason. And then you just in your mind, you think of that reason. And that creates conspiracy theories. Conspiracy theories lead to problems, and it makes the government look like it's not transparent.
Yeah.
And when I say the government, I'm talking about, a decade of this going on, back through different administrations.
Right.
So it's always better to show that you're pursuing the right side of justice. And here, what I would do is I would say, find everybody in these documents that could be prosecuted. It's a new administration now. I don't know why nobody was prosecuted over the last administration, but man, this is really heating up.
Yeah, you'd think.
Some indictments.
Well, you'd think that because Trump's name is the number one name in the Epstein files, that the Biden administration, and they'd already weaponized the DOJ against him and his family. Why not just go after him for the whatever Epstein stuff there was? If there had been anything, and what they probably found out was there wasn't anything to go after him about, and because you can better believe they would have weaponized that against him. And so here's the guy who probably stands the most to lose from this, document dump, and he's taken the incoming arrows from people who say, well, wait a minute, how come you're not going after people? And it's like, well, hold on, we're just getting our arms around this, I think it's kind of interesting. One more thing, somebody writes in, the public is not as stupid as they think we are. Go to any bar in America and you'll find people talking about this stuff for over a decade, and that is true. This has been true.
Yeah.
This has been something people do not take kindly to people trafficking in children or
Exactly.
underage girls. They don't like it.
It could be billions of dollars in financial crimes, right? And nobody would care, like people care, because not just the fact that these girls were trafficked, but the very sensational nature of it. The fact that they were on a plane to an island, the fact that they were taken away to a private island. I mean, it sounds almost like a horror fiction, right?
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is that it happened, and we still don't know all the details about how it happened and who was responsible, other than Epstein and Maxwell. That's only two people, and there's definitely a
ain't
bigger
talking.
conspiracy than two. So.
No, she wasn't. And, by the way, when James Comey's daughter prosecuted her at the SDNY, they cut that such a narrow swath to go after Ghislaine Maxwell. It was just like, and then we're going to go over here and then here, and we're not going to actually do the full breadth of the case that would explain
Right.
the alpha to the zeta or whatever.
Remember, Victoria, that a lot of the information that we would learn about the deliberations and the reasons why they made those decisions tactically in that prosecution are redacted. And that makes people really upset.
Yeah, it does. And, I will say that one of the things I believed that came as a result of that was some, leaks, some tactical leaks on the part of the people at SDNY who did not like Donald Trump. I mean, all of a sudden.
That always happens.
Oh.
And actually, during Trump's first, if you look at the two administrations, during the first administration, if you remember, it was leaking like a sieve. He couldn't get anything done without everyone knowing.
Yeah, that's
They
right.
repaired a lot of that. They fixed a lot of that, those problems in Trump 2. So,
Yeah, they can't.
they
Yeah,
do learn.
they kept OPSEC. That's what they did. They just
Absolutely.
Spies, Lies, and Cybercrime. This is your book, and we'll have you back to talk about the Hansen case as well as this. And tell me, can you give us an overview of what your book is about and why people should buy it?
Certainly. Well, in the really quick overview, is cybercrime right now is an incredibly large crime. It's actually the third largest economy on Earth by just a gross domestic product of cybercrime. It's exceeded $18 trillion a year. And that's a lot of money from our pockets to cyber criminals. So I wrote a book that teaches you to think like a spy hunter. I went back to the old days of espionage and hunting spies and counterintelligence and translated that into cybersecurity. So I'm going to teach you the way the FBI teaches you with these thrilling stories. It's all storytelling. This ain't a boring cybersecurity book.
Oh, cool.
And these stories will teach you how to defend yourself, to have to spot the cyber criminals and the different crimes like impersonation attacks and confidence schemes and AI deepfake attacks, exploitation, destruction, infiltration, and of course, the engine of all espionage, deceit. And then I flip it on the bad guys and teach you methodology to protect yourself from all those attacks. And the cool thing is, it's kind of like learning by osmosis. You read all these really cool true crime stories, and as you're reading these exciting stories, the book's a page turner. You learn what you need to know. And the most edifying thing as an author that I have received from my readers, thousands of people write me that this guy tried to scam me. This cybercrime group tried to get me. I saw this pop up on my computer, and because I read your book, I knew what to do.
Wow.
That's why I wrote the book, and it's a really great book.
That's a good idea. Very good. Thank you so much, Eric. I really appreciate you coming on. Don't stay there and wait for your interview to upload, so don't go anywhere. And I appreciate you coming on very much. And Godspeed to you, and come back.
Absolutely, Victoria. Thank you for having me on. This was a lot of fun, and I'd love to come back.
Thank you so much. It was a lot of fun for me, too. I'd love to hear the Hansen story. I mean, that guy was the biggest spy in the FBI history. He was awful. And so the FBI was just so cool. They thought everything was fine. And then they find out this guy's stealing information and sending it off to the Russians. And we talked about that not too awfully long ago with J. Michael Waller, who knew, Robert Hansen. I mean, they would get together and have coffee, and he would mentor him, and Waller knew stuff, and Hansen knew stuff, and they got together and kind of jawboned about what they knew about the Soviets and stuff like that. It was just crazy. So now I'd like to I want to get Mr. O'Neill back on. We'll talk about how he did that, how the FBI did that, and crazy, crazy times. Okay, so a couple more things I wanted to run over with you from the Epstein files, and let's see if I can find it. Yes, the Steve Bannon stuff, and as well, the Reid Hoffman. I mean, one of the things that we know is that Reid Hoffman is a person who helped bankroll the E. Jean Carroll lawsuit against Trump. She and he worked together with New York state lawmakers to extend the statute of limitations on particular crimes having to do with past, sexual assaults and stuff like that. It's how they got P. Diddy, and didn't end up with much of anything on him, even though it was gross. And that's how they tried to set up Donald Trump with a woman who couldn't remember when, where, what she was wearing, anything about the crime. It was an absolute disgrace. And so, but it was part of the entire play of lawfare against Trump over the past, 10 years. They set this thing up, and it was just, fairly effective, although that's just been vacated. So nothing has stuck to Trump. He's still, I think, going after and appealing the fine that he's supposed to do. And I know, and here's the thing, so many people on the left, of which many of you guys are, really believe that Trump is, he's a pedophile. And you almost wish he were. And it's just disgraceful. I mean, think of, you got to recognize. Well, anyway, so Reid Hoffman talked about how he got involved in that, in the deal, in the E. Jean Carroll case. But what I wanted to do was to talk about why it is that he has not been named much in the media. And so the guys on the All In podcast, all the tech guys, the VC dudes that, a very popular podcast, and it's all about tech. They do political things as well. And David Sachs is the AI as well as the cyber, the crypto czar for the Trump administration. So he's got a dog in the fight, okay? And David Sachs likes Trump. And fine. Here he is talking about, however, the fact that Reid Hoffman has been pretty much iced out of discussions in the New York Times.
Speak about the corruption of power centers. I think a major one has to be the New York Times. The number one person in the Epstein files from Silicon Valley, which is Reid Hoffman, mentioned 2,600 times, had a multi-year relationship with Epstein. They call each other very good friends. They did deals together. Reid stayed at the trifecta, which is not just the island, but the townhouse and the New Mexico ranch. And
after Epstein was convicted.
If you're going to write about Silicon Valley, Reid was the one who introduced Epstein to Peter Thiel and Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg, organized that famous dinner. How can you not mention that as the root of Epstein's involvement in Silicon Valley? And yet Reid just gets a mention in one sentence of that article along with several other people. It's crazy. I mean, the New York Times clearly has a list of people they consider approved targets. They're all right-coded, people like Elon or Peter Thiel, and even Jay Cal, because of his association with us, I guess. And they become the targets. But the people who've donated hundreds of millions of dollars to the Democrat Party and have paid for dirty tricks against Trump, they basically are spared.
Honestly, this is just emblematic of the whole institutional rot and the distrust in the country. Right? They're part of the cabal. It's part of the institutions that people are losing faith in. Epstein was a scumbag. And the fact of the matter is we're not seeing equal play on both sides.
That's the darn truth. Yeah, exactly right. Just wanted to play that for you because I know if I didn't play for you today, I would kick myself later. And it's true. It's true. They do selectively edit out the names of people they don't like. Here's another one that I think, or they do like, I should say. We have, let's see. Do I have that? Hold on a second. I want to make sure I've got the video. Thought I did a video of this. So crazy. Interesting. Yeah, sorry about that. It is a video that, let's see, I'm going to share a tab with you. The reaction of Steve Bannon being in and being so cozied up to Jeffrey Epstein has been received with disgust by the most unusual collection of people you can imagine. Here is one of them. Enrique Tarrio, the Proud Boys leader, and he says that I've been a huge supporter of Bannon for quite some time. I always saw him as an adept strategist, someone who knows how to navigate the media landscape like very few in this movement can. I saw him testify against Roger Stone at his trial and was completely disgusted. But because I'm a team player, and I guess he's on, I don't know who's, I guess he's on Roger's team? Trump's team? What's the deal? I tried seeing the bigger picture. I didn't focus on the horrible and untrue things he said about Roger on the stand. I should have listened to Stone. In prison, because he got sent away to prison for J6, to which he was not even there. In prison, I learned the laws of the jungle. You don't let pedophiles walk, and those that support them also get checked in along with them. What I see in these messages in support for one of the most dastardly human beings to walk on this planet. There is no spinning this. Never give evil shelter. Never give them a quarter. I've heard the whole, he was running an oppo through his documentary about Jeffrey Epstein, and even giving him the benefit of the doubt. The messages are enough for me. Steve supported my family by giving them a platform. He advocated for J6ers, and a month ago he gave me a microphone on his show for the first time. I'm grateful for that. Many J6ers are, but I can't in good conscience support aiding and abetting Epstein and his testimony against my friend. He's referring to Roger Stone. I'm extremely loyal to those who have supported J6ers and their families, but this is a bridge too far. One I can't cross. Maybe more information comes out that he was running a sting, but I doubt it. General Mike Flynn mentioned that. He goes, so glad that you mentioned this. Even Dana Lash weighed in. Dana Lash. Okay, Dana Lash is, of course, a podcaster, a talk show host on terrestrial radio, and much more. And Dana talked about, she didn't like, nobody who worked at Breitbart liked Steve Bannon. I mean, nobody, because the guy was a wrecking ball. And Shapiro left, Ben Shapiro left, Dana Lash left. I mean, there were a number of people who left and were like, well, what the hell, man? And here's the little thing about me about this. I have for years, I wanted to always write for PJ Media, and I do now, and it's kind of a fun thing. We have opinion journalism. We give you snark, and we give you the facts, okay? And so you'll see a lot of my writing there. And I always, because I used to have Andrew on my show, Andrew Breitbart on my show in Portland all the time, and the other times I've been in other cities and that sort of thing. But and I loved Andrew Breitbart. I loved him, and he gave me the time of day, and it was just an amazing thing. And he'd come on. I remember one time I asked him to come on. I texted him. I said, "Hey, dude, can you come on my show about this particular issue?" He goes, "Well, yeah, I'm standing in line at the airport. Yeah, sure, why not? Let's do it." He was waiting in line at the airport and came on the show. Okay. Because that's just the kind of magnanimous individual he was. Well, after Andrew died, and he'd started all these wonderful websites, I just thought, man, I wanted to work for Breitbart. I mean, when I start writing full time, or in addition to my radio stuff, I want to work for Breitbart. And after Steve Bannon took over Breitbart, I go, I'm not saying he hasn't done good things. I'm just suggesting to you that if you want to write for an organization that has some journalistic credibility, Breitbart in 2016 was not the place to be. It was wholly in the tank for Trump. Not that the New York Times and ABC News and NBC News and all those other places aren't in the tank for any Democrat anywhere at all times. I'm not suggesting that. I just wanted somebody with an organization with a little journalistic integrity and credibility, but Bannon just went all in, and it was embarrassing to me. It was embarrassing. And I said, I will never work for that organization. Not that they would have me, but maybe they would now. Be that as it may. That was my 2 cents. And I'm not saying I watch War Room sometimes. I mean, one of his guests, a frequent guest on there, Mike Davis, has been on this program multiple times. I love Mike Davis. He's a pit bull. I love him. He's a guy who gets things done, and in the arena of the legal arena. And so it's not that I don't think he does some good work. I do. But I kind of wonder if Enrico Tarrio is not onto something there. Isn't that interesting? And I know what he did to Breitbart. And I know he's in the tank for the MAGA movement. There's a reason that he's not in the White House anymore. Remember, he had a cup of coffee in the White House in the first Trump administration. He ain't there anymore. He's not there. And there's a reason for that. And he was probably more effective on the outside than he was on the inside. But, it is troubling that Bannon had, Bannon was in the Epstein file cozying up to him so much. You know what I mean? There are these emails and texts and stuff that look just, wretched. They don't look good. And I've only seen a few of them, and I'm sharing them with you. Hey, did you get Chernobyl yet? I guess he made a movie about Chernobyl. I haven't even bothered to look it up. And then Epstein says, yeah, I got it. Masterpiece. No? Or somebody made the film. We'll watch next week. If there's if I get there, we can watch together. Style is something special. Bannon's a filmmaker from way back, okay? He is. Island Weeks 8, Paris again, 16 to 30, Ranch in August. He's like doing the whole circuit. 8 July Island, 16 July Paris, 30 July in August, New Mexico. That's when I think that sounds like when Bannon's showing up. Noam Chomsky, the liberals' favorite college professor, and Noam Chomsky's in the Epstein file, quite a bit. And it was interesting because Epstein, he and his wife, they were having all kinds of trouble with their kids, their grown kids from his first marriage. Apparently, there was a huge family fissure. So Noam Chomsky's helping somehow with Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein liked the intelligentsia, the college professors and all that. There's much more to that story, but not time to tell it now. But anyway, Noam in no shape to film, clearly in some sort of pain, and has grown a beard. At 90, we need to get him scheduled soon as practicable. He spent 3 hours crushing me, he said. Shame for both of you. I will land in New York Sunday, fly to Ireland Tuesday afternoon, then back to Paris following Tush's Tuesday. Okay, got it. I'm free to speak later if you like. Yes, finishing broadcast. So this is in 2019, obviously before Jeffrey Epstein died, and he's doing War Room at that point in time. So it's just like, ew, how cozy were you two dudes anyway? You're going to all of his properties. That's kind of weird, don't you think? Here's another one. Let's share this tab. We've got Steve Bannon. Just received a video of Stone attacking you. This is Roger Stone. And Jeffrey Clinton's pimp, et cetera, et cetera. Roger Stone, who cares? He says stuff like this all the time, says Bannon. Face to face. Oh, of course not. On Alex Jones? Nah, no worry. I'm in Wednesday night till Sunday. Lots to discuss. And Bannon says, I'm in Thursday. You want to get breakfast? I mean, that's what they're saying. And he says, yes. Done. What time do you prefer breakfast? 7 a.m.? Perfect. Has the media staked out your place yet? Bannon asks him. No, all easy. Lots of people here tonight. In fact, Laib Jabbour, I'm going to find out who this guy is, on his way over. Very cool. Any further feedback from MBZ, who's the sheikh that Prince Andrew introduced Jeffrey Epstein to? Can we move back? Oh, can we move breakfast to 8 o'clock? And he says, yeah. Thoughts on Harvard, trying to work it. If you plan on coming back to New York Sunday night after. Giuliani also mocked Mueller for pursuing charges of lying to Congress and prosecutors, et cetera, et cetera. And then he says MBZ again. Anyway, so they all know each other. They're all playing cozy time with each other. Did you not see any of this? Have I just been reading this stuff? Oh, geez. Well, whatever. I apologize. I hope you got to see that stuff. Yeah. All right. So next Tuesday is when we're back doing a live stream, and we'll see if we're in good graces with YouTube, and we'll find out if we're going to continue to be throttled by YouTube. And, well, I mean, we've told you what we know so far about the latest revelations from the Epstein file. We told you about Prince Andrew getting arrested today. He's been released. We told you about some of the major names coming out of the Epstein file and how people are having a conniption fit over some of the names. We've shown you that some of the names that were revealed by the congressional representatives, Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie, weren't actually names having to do with Jeffrey Epstein whatsoever, but their reputations have been destroyed now. Thanks a lot, dillweeds. I mean, that's why they didn't want to just dump all the stuff. They went there specifically to get redacted names. Well, we found 6 people in the list, and those people are believed to be people who dealt with Jeffrey Epstein and may have been pedophiles or whatever. And then it turns out they're just guys who appeared in a photographic lineup for another case, but ended up in the Epstein files because they ended up with 2 other people who were routinely in the Epstein files. And these guys, one guy lost his job. He's like an electrician or something. Great. Great job, guys. So that's the problem. All right. See you next Tuesday, 1 to whenever, that's Pacific time, 4 to whenever Eastern. And love you, mean it. Thank you so much for coming on the Adult in the Room podcast. See you next time. Thank you so much for watching and listening to this episode of the Adult in the Room podcast. We do not take you for granted. We appreciate every single person who tunes in every week to listen and watch this program. We're here every Tuesday and Thursday, live streaming on Rumble, and then on every other podcast platform shortly thereafter when we can port it over and get it over there as soon as we can. All the shows can be found at victoriataft.com, where the censorship regime has been banned by me. Follow me on social media at these names: Victoria Taft, the Adult in the Room podcast, and The Victoria Taft Show. Send media inquiries, or any others for that matter, to victoria@victoriataft.com. And here's a big ask. Would you please subscribe, share, like, comment, recommend, and give this program a 5-star rating where you can? We really appreciate it. We do not take that for granted either. Follow my work at, you guessed it, victoriataft.com. PJ Media, I write tons over there. Flamingo Audiobooks, and of course the radio. I don't do this alone. This show is produced and engineered by Overall Media. 1A Cast is responsible for some of the Adult in the Room podcast's imaging. Logo design by Hageman Creative. The Adult in the Room podcast is produced at Flamingo Road Studios. All rights reserved.